1:30. I'm going to call this meeting of the McHenry County Zoning Board of Appeals to order. The reason for our hearing today is we have 3 petitions that we're going to deal with individually, but they're all with the same request and with the same company that's going to be running these. So the first petition is application 2023-007. The PIN number, it's part of PIN number 17-04-400-007 and 17-04-377002. The address is 6712 Main Street, Union, Illinois. The location of this property, it consists of approximately 36 acres and is located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Main Street and Prairie Street, approximately 700 feet south of Jefferson Road in Coral Township. The applicant is Illinois Solar 9000 LLC, who is the same applicant as the other 2 petitions today, and the request is for a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. I would ask the petitioner if it's possible, would you like us to read the petition, or can we waive the reading of the petition itself?
We can waive that.
Okay. At this time, I will introduce, have the members of the board introduce themselves, starting on my far left with the township in which they reside.
Robert Cozen, Algonquin Township.
Donald Smolinski, Grafton Township.
Charles Eldridge, Richmond Township.
I'm Linnea Kustra, Alden Township.
Vicki Gardner, Munda Township.
Kurt Schnabel, Riley Township.
Jessica Beverly, Door Township.
This petition has been reviewed and the following items have been received prior to today's scheduled hearing. The publisher's certificate of publication from a newspaper is dated March 11, 2023, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. The affidavit of posting was signed and the date posted was March 17, 2023, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. The affidavit of mailing was signed and the date mailed was March 9, 2023, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. The survey has been checked against the petition, the legal notice, and the publication in the newspaper, and all 3 match. The filing fees have been paid. The endangered species consultation was not required for this petition, and the McHenry County Soil and Water Conservation District report has been received. You are the petitioner. Everybody who is going to speak on behalf of the petitioner, as well as anyone on the members of the public, including staff, anyone who thinks they would like to speak today, I would like to swear you in at this time. So if you think you're going to be speaking, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now just to give you a little bit, for those in the public that are here, what will happen is the petitioner will present their case to us. And they might have one witness, they might have several witnesses. After each witness presents their testimony, then the members of the board have the opportunity to ask questions of that witness. After that, then any members of the public, including first with the staff, and then any members in the audience are allowed to ask questions of their testimony. It has to pertain to their testimony. And then when that's finished, then they will present maybe another witness. So this will happen with every witness. And then when that is done, then we will have testimony from the public, and the first will be the staff, and they'll give us their staff report. And then the board will ask questions of them if they have any questions. And then after that time, if any of you have a comment that you would like to give to the board, you have that opportunity to do so at that time. So during the testimony, you can ask questions, but your commentary then to the board is after all the testimony has been given. So I want you to understand how this will work. So at this time, I will just turn it over to the petitioner to go ahead and present your testimony. Please state your name and address and who you are with the company, if you would, and then you can go ahead with your testimony.
My name is Jackie Basile. I'm with Lightstar Renewables, the applicant, Illinois Solar 9000 LLC. I am the project developer for the application 2023-007, also known as the Northrop Road project. I guess for the purpose of this presentation, we've kind of given a general overview of our company and what we do that pertains to all three of the applications that we're presenting today. I could go over specifics for the 007 application, and then Cami, who's also a developer, she can go over the specifics for the other two projects, if that's okay with all of you. Okay, so next slide. As I mentioned, I'm Jackie Basile, Development Manager for Project 007, Northrop Road. Cami Cohen, and then our consultant engineer, Carl Broberg from Stantec. So to give you just a little idea of who we are, we're a community solar developer. We're unique in that we build projects and develop projects that are up to 5 megawatts in size generally. We're not big utility scale solar developers. So what we generate for electricity goes back into the local community and the local grid, and subscribers within the local grid, such as ComEd in this instance, can buy basically a discounted rate of energy through the energy that we put into the grid. We're also a, sorry, can you
Sorry.
go back? That's okay. We are also unique in the fact that we own all of our projects from start to finish. So when we develop them, we own and operate them for the life of the project. We have no intentions of selling the projects to any of our developers. So benefits of community solar, it's, like I had mentioned, it's for the local community, allows community subscribers to purchase energy at a discounted rate. It doesn't require the installation of solar panels on a house, so people can really reap the benefits from the energy that's generated without having to, buy their own panels. It provides a great tax revenue for towns, counties, and school districts throughout, well, this is the pilot program, but it's really, Illinois has a separate tax program that Cami can discuss further in the presentation. For the landowners, it provides a source of income. We lease the land from our landowners, and without our landowners, we wouldn't have projects. So otherwise, we've seen a lot of instances where landowners, they can't keep their land, it costs too much to maintain it, and they're looking for a source of revenue without having to sell the property. For the planet, it's obviously a source of clean, renewable energy. It's less pollution and fewer greenhouse gas emissions, environmentally friendly. And really, for these three projects that we're proposing, we've got a unique way of developing them in that we're doing both agrivoltaics and pollinator-friendly habitat. Next slide, please. So design considerations. As I mentioned, we're doing agrivoltaics. So I know that's probably a new term for a lot of people and what it means. But basically it came about because we've been to these presentations many times throughout other states, and what we run into the most is what's good for ag land, or what we need for ag land is sun, open fields, no trees, no shading, and that's exactly what we need for solar development as well. And when we go to these town meetings, the biggest concern is loss of prime farmland. And so what we've decided to do as kind of a company is develop both ag land, or develop a solar project incorporating ag land between the panels. So it's called agrivoltaics, and we've spaced out our panels so that they're about 16 feet from panel edge to panel edge, and about 30 feet from post to post, so that we can get tractors in between the panels and farm and operate the site. And just continue to keep it in ag land. And then obviously when these sites are decommissioned and the useful life of the solar project. We'll decommission them and return the land to agricultural operations, or whatever use would be preferred. We're also incorporating pollinator-friendly habitat around the buffer areas and fence line areas. This is kind of a recommendation of the state of Illinois. So we're following, in order for us to be considered a pollinator-friendly project, we have to follow the Illinois Pollinator Scorecard, which is a kind of a very detailed list of items that we have to check boxes off and design our projects accordingly to get a certain criteria, a certain number threshold in order to be considered. That is our plan for all 3 of these projects. We've incorporated property line and side yard setbacks that exceed, I believe, the state requirements and meet your local requirements. We're avoiding impacts to drain tiles, and by both doing drain tile surveys before construction and through your AMA program in the state of Illinois. We've agreed to replace or repair any damaged drain tiles that occurs during construction of all of our projects. And then obviously we want to reduce as much ground disturbance as we can. We want to continue to farm this land, and really the grading is going to be limited to just the access roads and any sort of slopes, minor slopes that we have, but we try to minimize that because it's really cost effective for us as well to minimize any sort of grading.
And if I can add one thing to the slide that's not.
Please, your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Cami Cohen, and I'm also a development manager along with Jackie. One other thing that is considered in the design is that if there are any residential properties that are not part of the parcel or not owned by the same landowner, we do have landscape screening that nearby residential property from the project. So I think that is noted elsewhere in the presentation, but just wanted to note that down here as well.
So intro to agrivoltaics, kind of touched on this briefly already. It's really the integration of both agriculture and solar. We're designing our solar panels so that we can meet the requirements for farming while also farming for solar. The state of Illinois has an incentive program basically that we have to, in order to get into this incentive program, we have to meet points criteria. So really, even though it's a kind of a policy of our own company that we're doing this in other states, but in the state of Illinois, it's an extra incentive for us to do this because we do get additional points and get into the, and basically if we get a certain threshold of points to get into the incentive program, it bodes well for us. So agrivoltaics is considered one of those points, so we're determined to do that here as well. And this is just a diagram to show kind of a design of how the panels will look. So we're proposing to use trackers, so they'll follow the sun throughout the day. They're not going to be, fixed tilt where you're going to be looking at the same view of panels throughout the day. So as they rotate and as the sun goes up and down throughout the day, those panels are the tilt on them is going to change. The maximum tilt, the highest the top of the panels will be about 9 feet 11 inches, and the bottom of the panel will be about 3 feet 9 inches from the ground surface. So this is the pollinators. Basically, the diagram to the lower right-hand corner of the slide shows the diagram provided by the pollinator-friendly scorecard. And basically, where we plan to plant our pollinators is in the buffer area and the perimeter area. And between the panels will obviously be our agrivoltaics. And jobs. Do you want to take this?
Sure, I can take this one. So we do understand that as part of the 2030 comprehensive plan that McHenry County has put out, it was of interest how many jobs and how much tax revenue these projects would generate for the local communities. So here are some typical stats that are well known to the industry. So during construction, which for these types of projects around 5 megawatts AC over like the 4 to 6 month period, 20 to 30 jobs are expected to be created per project. If we do have the project construction timeline staggered and in series, then we might be using the same crew on all 3 projects. But they would mainly be equipment operators, electricians, fence installers, laborers and construction managers. And we definitely do intend to work with local contractors within the state of Illinois. If there are any specialties that need to be brought in from other communities or other states, then we would look to outsource some of that work, but definitely for the benefit of the community and also our own benefit, local jobs is definitely what we intend to employ for these projects. And then also the employment opportunities afforded due to an agrivoltaics project include either allowing the current tenant farmer to remain on the land with the relationship that he or she may have with the landowner to continue farming the area in between the panels. If the current tenant farmer is not interested in the endeavor, then we do have a third-party farming entity that would help us source additional farmers who would be interested in farming the project instead. So that could be an additional farming employment opportunity created by the project. And then for the life of the project, we will have an operations and maintenance crew who will come out and ensure that all of the landscaping and pollinators that we plant remain intact and effective throughout the life of the project. And then also maintaining just weed abatement and performing electrical operations and maintenance on the solar panels, the inverters, the transformer, and all the equipment itself. So those will be, I think, 1 to 2 people coming 3 to 4 times a year. So that's a constant source of employment that would be maintained for the project. And in terms of tax revenue, so you might be aware that the Illinois Department of Revenue has a standard methodology for, I forget the word, but, valuing commercial solar energy systems in Illinois. So I've just copy pasted like the general calculation method here, but not to go too far into detail, as soon as the projects are, I believe, in the ground, the Department of Revenue will create a separate parcel number for the project itself, and for all intents and purposes, the property owner will become us, the developer, and all tax bills will be sent to the address associated with that new parcel number. So as the solar owner and operator, we will receive the property tax bill each year and not the landowner, and we will be responsible for paying property taxes on the project. And over the 35-year life of the system, with the local tax percentages or mill rates plugged into our financial model, we expect to pay around $800,000 over 35 years for each of the first 2 projects along Northrop and Froling Road, and around $600,000 for the South Grand Highway project. And the difference is just due to differences in the mill rates for each project.
In what rate?
The mill rate, or basically the tax rate. So the tax rate of all the different jurisdictions that would be afforded tax revenue from the project.
So this section kind of goes, you had this included in your staff report, so we can kind of go over this briefly. As far as the first bullet for approval standards for conditional use, please describe how the conditional use meets all applicable standards. We did complete EcoCats for all 3 projects, and the site designs meet these requirements. The site plan complies with the will comply with the stormwater management ordinance. I say will in the sense that we will do a stormwater management permit for these applications once we get to the building permit step. Setback requirements are met. Vegetative screening has been provided and included into the designs where the project is within 500 feet of residents and off-site residents. And a landscape detail for these areas has been provided to the town, I believe, yesterday. No lighting is proposed. Drain tile surveys will be completed. A signed AMA has been provided for all 3 projects. A farm plan and a vegetation management plan detailing how we intend to farm the site for agrivoltaics and maintain the site for just the general pollinators and ground cover. That will also be completed as part of the building permit submission. Fencing is in compliance with the National Electric Code. Required signage will be posted. An O&M contractor will maintain the site, the overall site. A decommissioning plan and associated bond will be posted. There's no impacts from dust, glare, noise, air pollutants, hazardous waste, odors, toxic substances, or fire explosion hazards generated from a solar facility. Is the conditional use compatible with existing or planned future development of these areas? We'll get into more detail on these specifics for each of these 3 projects because we did get comments from the Union Township and the village, or Coral Township and the village of Union. So we can get into that in specifics. But as I guess an overall statement for all 3 projects, all of these projects, the solar project is temporary in nature in that it's only going to be in the ground for approximately 35 years. And after that, all 3 sites will be fully decommissioned and removed and can continue to be either farmed as agricultural land or developed in any use that the county prefers. Is the conditional use detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare of the area? Solar is not detrimental to, does not endanger the public or wildlife. There's no lighting, odors, fumes, dust, or vibrations generated, and the project will be secured with fencing that meets all the code requirements. Will the conditional use be injurious to the use and enjoyment of the other property in the area? As a result of compliance with general standards of applicability as well as environmental performance standards, setback requirements, landscape maintenance, and fencing, these projects will not be injurious to use and enjoyment of other properties. Will the conditional use be substantially diminish and impair property values? We've found no evidence to indicate that property values are impacted by solar. We've done a lot of research in this area. There's been many, many studies that have indicated that there's no negative impact anyway to property values. Are adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities provided? Being that we're generating electricity, we don't require the use of electricity or water or any sort of public utilities. We have initiated interconnection studies with ComEd. Those are underway. Access roads will meet all county requirements. A driveway permit will be requested from the highway department, and all stormwater measures will be provided in our building permit application. Has conditional use operation been designed to provide ingress and egress to minimize traffic congestion and hazard on public streets? Once operational, these projects really don't have any traffic associated with them. As Cammie had mentioned, we have operation and maintenance crew that would be coming on site a couple, 3, 4 times a year. Also just our farmer who's going to be farming the land. But a driveway permit will be requested from the highway department. Will the conditional use conform to the applicable standards of the underlying zoning district? The projects comply with all standards, accessory structures and uses, permitted encroachments, off-street parking and loading, landscaping, signs, sewage disposal, waste supply, stormwater management, and access management. And setback requirements of the A1 zoning are all met. So our first project is Northrop Road. This is a 4.95 megawatt AC project, and as you can see in the red area.
Can I walk up and look at that? I'm not trying, I just first time I saw this. Can I walk and look at
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
Go ahead.
I'm fine. So the red area is the proposed lease area, and you can see in the left-hand side from Northrop Road will be our access road that enters the site, and the little kind of sliver that goes to the north on the right-hand side, northeast corner, is the point of interconnection of where we're connecting to the existing grid. The total parcel area is about 70 acres. 36 of those acres will be leased. Current parcel is agricultural land, and we find the site we consider the site suitable because terrain, basically it's very flat, close proximity to a transmission line, landowner interest, and favorable environmental conditions. The solar installations are allowed within the A1 zoning district by the site plan approval and conditional use permit.
You know, I'll ask a question now?
No.
Okay.
So this is the actual design, gives you a little bit more detail on where the arrays are. As I mentioned, the northeast corner is the point of interconnection utility line.
I apologize.
No, you're good.
There's an antenna.
And there's another one down here.
Oh, it's been haircut. Thank you.
Just stand down here if you want to.
Thanks. Thank you.
Next slide.
Hang on.
Oh,
Back.
sorry.
Back, it wasn't helpful.
I just told him to go down there, sorry. You'll see like the access road will go along the northern side, and our electrical equipment is also shown on the two pad areas. There's two, one at
Thank
the
you.
northwest
Appreciate it.
corner and one on the northeast corner. Completed studies to date, we've done a wetland delineation. There is one wetland that's delineated along the access road. There's currently a driveway that crosses this wetland with a culvert. We would likely have to do improvements to that culvert and when we widen the driveway. All required permitting will be completed with the Army Corps. And we've also completed our threatened and endangered species review. We've completed the EcoCat, and they basically have said that there's no impact and adverse effects are unlikely, and consultation was terminated. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service identified the long-eared bat, eastern prairie fringed orchid, prairie bush clover, monarch butterfly. Basically, since there's no trees for the bats, there's likely no impact there. In the fringed orchid, clover, and any plant species, the site has been in agricultural production, so those species likely would not exist. And we're planting pollinator-friendly habitat for monarch butterflies and other pollinating species to provide more additional habitat. If we need to do a federal permit, obviously our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service consultation will be completed. Cultural review, we did submit a request from SHPO, and they found that this project is exempt from any further studies, so phase 1 archaeological survey was not required. And the pollinator scorecard review, as part of our vegetation management plan, we're going to review the pollinator scorecard and, like I'd mentioned, check off the boxes to make the minimum points requirement to become a pollinator-friendly project. And the NRI LISA, which has been submitted to you by the Soil and Water Conservation District, which I can get to in the next slide. So this came back a score of 87.13 out of 100, which is a high number. The recommendations in the NRI LISA were that we do wetland and floodplain impact avoidance and require permitting through the McHenry County and USACE, Army Corps, which we intend to do. Protect drainage tiles, which we intend to do by doing both the survey and completing the AMA and repairing and replacing any damaged drain tiles. Native plantings, which we plan to do with our pollinators, and the AMA. So we've received some of the comment letters. I believe it was the McHenry County Building Division, the Coral Township, and Village of Union, and the Water Division. The McHenry County Building Division comment is basically just requirements for what would be forthcoming for our building permit application. So they're very general, nothing really specific for me to address today. Coral Township had concerns of land use, and I believe, is there a slide after this that gets into land use? Yeah, okay, sorry, can you go back?
Yeah.
Coral Township gets in the discussion of land use, had concerns, and as did Village of Union. The Village of Union also made a comment that says that the project does not comply with the plans, land use, landscaping, natural resources, environment, and quality of life. I'll discuss the land use in the next slide, but as far as landscaping, natural resources, and environment, we've done our due diligence, and I would find it hard to argue that those items have not been met or accomplished. And decommissioning, which we've agreed to do through our decommissioning plan. And the Water Division will be another slide as well. So land use, McHenry County, the current land use is agricultural and it's zoned A1. Solar is an allowed use within this zoning. And the 2030 comprehensive plan was for residential. As I mentioned kind of earlier, really like this project is, it's an allowed use within the A1 zoning. As far as agricultural, we're intending to still farm it. The remainder of the parcel will remain unaffected and will continue to be farmed as is. After the site is decommissioned, the project is removed from the site, the parcel can be developed as residential or as landowner and county approves so. Coral Township, their land use is commercial business. It is a commercial, I don't know their definition of commercial, it is a commercial solar facility. And as I mentioned, really it's a temporary use that can be changed after the decommissioning of the project. And the Village of Union, in the staff report, it said that the land use was traditional residential, but their letter had said that it was museum and agricultural. From the letter of the village letter, it looks like museum is on the northern northwest portion of the site. It's kind of a little circle part of the parcel, but not necessarily where the project is. Project is really in the agricultural part of the land use, and I believe meets the definition for agricultural use as it is an agrivoltaic project. Next slide. So there were some comments from the Water Resource Division, which we plan to really get into the details far more when we get our water division permit. And actually our engineer, Carl, and his team has been working on getting in touch with the director, and I forget her name, but the director of the Water Division Department to really get clarity on some of these items. So as far as the questions or comments that were raised were that the impervious area is greater than 20,000 square feet and requires a stormwater storage basin. We'll either have to complete that requirement or modify the plans so that the impervious area is less than the required square footage. The drain tile survey we will complete. The FEMA flood hazard area is inconsistent with the base flood elevations that were calculated. Again, we're reviewing this and just redoing the calculations, and we'll meet whatever requirements that the Water Division has. The wetland delineation was completed outside of the growing season. We're trying to get some clarity on this as well. It was completed during the Army Corps of Engineers growing season, but if field verification is required by the county, we can definitely do so. Native vegetation performance standards for solar farms. Maintenance and monitoring standards identified in the Illinois Pollinator-Friendly Scorecard. The Pollinator-Friendly Solar Site Act will be followed to meet the requirements of the state, and a vegetation management plan will be provided to the county for review and approval prior to our building permit application. Soil erosion and sediment control plan will be provided again with our building permit application, and a stormwater management permit application has not been submitted to the county for review as of yet, and will be as part of our submission for the building permit.
That's the last slide on the site.
Okay.
So that's it?
That's it for this site. So
Yeah,
then, so do you
Okay.
want to open up
All
for
right.
comment?
So we'll start with questions on my left, Mr. Cozen. Got you off guard, huh?
You did.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'll try to limit my questions to the illustration that you had up
Okay.
on the board. I will go from my left, which I believe is the western part
Yep.
of it. You had identified your obligations of adjusting the weight limit for the culvert, is that correct?
Correct. So we have to probably expand the driveway because it's not wide enough. And then that culvert will be either replaced or adjusted.
Will you be subjecting yourself to similar reviews for the weight limit on Main Street and Northrop Road?
Do you want to answer that, Carl?
Sure.
You need to say your name, I think.
I'm Carl Broberg, civil engineer for Stantec Consulting, 746 East Limerick Lane in Beloit, Wisconsin. The intent was not to undergo any analysis of Northrop Road. However, it is not unusual for us to perform a pre-condition survey to verify the condition of the road prior to construction, and then to guarantee that it won't be destroyed after construction.
Thank you. In terms of going to the northeast corner, you reference a utility god pole. Can you define the acronym of a utility god pole and who would be the manager of such?
So I'm not sure what the acronym for GOB is, but it is a ComEd-owned utility line. So we would connect to it, provide whatever upgrades that would be required in our interconnection studies on that line. And do you have another question?
Not to make light of it, but if you were to phone a friend, they'd probably call it a gang-operated air breaker switch for a three-phase facility. But
Oh, so you're testing me.
I don't know. So I take it how many transformer inverters will be on the facility?
There's two pads. One is on the northeast corner at the end of the access road, and one's on the northwest corner at the end of the access road. There'll be one pad mounted transformer on each of those, and it looks like one pad mounted, I don't know. There'll be a switchboard and a solar transformer, and one pad mounted solar inverter rack mounted on the, yeah, there's those two things, and then, do we have totals? Before I'm stumbling over my words.
Yeah, I believe it's 2.5 megawatt inverters that then will lead their low or their medium voltage cables into a combiner of sorts, and then lead underground to those 5 interconnection poles that you were just discussing.
And how are they delivered on site? Are they assembled from parts or delivered intact?
The inverters,
Yes, sir.
they would be delivered intact.
The panels
There's
have a-
another microphone, if you want to grab that one, maybe you just don't have to switch back.
What was the question, sir?
Oh, no, you answered, you said they'd be delivered intact.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
just going to follow up. Is there an estimated weight for each one of those if they are delivered intact?
I don't believe the room is shaking here. I don't believe that we included the specification sheet on that, but that can be provided. So they're half the size of, maybe a third of the size of a shipping container. It's they're not the gigantic transformers that you would see for a large utility scale site.
The swing on the arc of the panels, you said the lowest was 3.5 feet. Is that in consideration of any snow drifting, even though we had a relatively light winter?
It is, and this is how we designed them in New York as well. It is just how they're designed, yeah.
The last question, at least since I'm clutching the mic, thank you, Madam Chairman, is concerns the interconnect. Do you have any operating existing facilities presently within the ComEd coverage?
No, we have projects that are currently, we're going through the land use process right now, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Illinois incentive program, the adjustable block program. But as part of that program, we have to have our land use permits. It's recommended that we have an interconnection application, and once we have those, actually our first step is the land use process, so getting through this step, and then we go into and submit our applications for the incentive program. As far as interconnection goes right now, we've submitted pre-applications that were favorable for these projects, and the queue, as everybody else, all of us solar developers are submitting projects into the interconnection that may or may not be developed. And what happened was that basically the queue got flooded because people were putting in applications a year ago and sitting and not doing anything. So as we watch that queue drain, we're getting new applications into the interconnection study so that they're studying the appropriate interconnections versus a substation that's 40 miles east of here. So that's kind of the plan that we have. Land use first, interconnection, and then our submission to the state for the program, and then obviously building permits and construction.
Are you familiar with the Berkeley Lab analysis that was released today relative to the Vismo queue?
Is that in reference to PJM?
No, it was in reference to the queue that Berkeley Lab has released its queue rate for Vismo in the area.
See, that's a different grid than what we connect to. So that would be for your utility scale grid. So this is just basically our grid for ComEd, like just local connection. The 3-phase lines that you see running down the street is what we connect to. We don't connect to the large utility lines. So that would be separate from us.
Hence the reference to the gang.
Okay.
Gang-operated brake switch for 3-phase.
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Could I follow up on something I said?
please.
I told you that there's two transformers, or excuse me, there's two inverters on the site. I want to clarify, used to a different arrangement, and I was just studying here. So there are 18 inline inverters. They're mounted on the piles and the posts themselves, and then there's two typical transformers that you would see at like a commercial facility. So the green boxes that you would see, those collect the power from those inline inverters and then take them to the poles. So just a little clarification.
Thank you.
Okay. Before I go to Mr. Smolinski, before I started this questioning, I wanted to ask staff, Kim specifically, how this, because we have this new legislation that recently passed in the state of Illinois, and how that impacts our ability to put extra conditions on solar farms based on what we had been doing in the past, now since this new law passed, how that has changed our process. So before we do all these questions, I thought I would just have Kim enlighten us as well as members of the audience.
Sure. So January 27th of this year, the state of Illinois did pass new laws for wind and solar commercial energy facilities with specific standards that need to be met. And they have outlined that the counties are not able to impose more restrictive regulations than what's outlined in these new laws. So setbacks from adjacent residences and height of facility structures, things like that we're used to regulating under our own regulations, we've now had to amend our ordinance to meet what the state has outlined. Along with that, they've stated that I'll just read it right out of their public act that was passed, is a request for siting approval or a special use permit for a commercial wind energy facility or a commercial solar energy facility or modification of an approved siting or special use permit shall be approved if the request is in compliance with the standards and conditions imposed in this act, the zoning ordinance adopted consistent with this code, and the conditions imposed under state and federal statutes and regulations. There's a number of regulations outlined in here in conformance with their IDNR's regulations for pollinators, for the siting requirements. Basically, if everything meets the state's laws that they've outlined here, the counties don't have the ability to deny them based on that. I'm not sure if you want me to say more on that, or if that's kind of gives a background on it, that this is, we're able to impose any conditions that are in line with that, just not more restrictive. That's my understanding.
Okay, that's helpful.
May I follow up with her?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, identify yourself.
I'm Charlie Eldridge, zoning board member, and I just wanted to hit on a point that I think I understand, is that, sorry about that, I thought I had turned this thing off.
Still listening to you.
It's still listening to me, anyhow. We in fact, the county, McHenry County or any other county, must approve if they meet the state standards, is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, that was the thing I wanted to clarify.
Okay, we'll go to questions by Mr. Smolinski.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Is the owner of the property in the home that's on the site there?
No, that's his tenant.
That's a tenant?
Yes.
Okay. Does that tenant do the farming there, do you know?
The landowner's in the audience and no.
Okay, thank you. Have you developed a draft landscape screening plan?
We've developed for this project, because we're outside of 500 feet from any off-site residence, there's no landscaping proposed, but for the other two projects, there is visual screening proposed and a detail that shows, which is not in this presentation, I don't believe. It was just sent to you yesterday.
I have it in my slideshow.
Okay.
Do you want me to show it on the other projects, or you want me to show it now?
We can, but if you have it handy, maybe you can just show it to him.
Yeah.
It's just a detail of what the landscape screening would look like. But as far as like a landscape plan, on the site plans. It will be added to those site plans for the building permit application. So that's a typical.
That's typically of what you do in your projects.
Correct, yeah, so there's different, this is prepared by like a landscape architect.
Yep.
And how tall do those grow, could you say?
You can identify yourself.
Carl Broberg with Stantec again. The plants will vary in height, but I believe the ones that we're showing here, they'll range anywhere from about 5 or 6 feet to maybe about 13, 14, 15 feet, somewhere in there.
Thank you. And do you have and what type of fencing are you going to enclose this project with?
Yeah, it's actually provided in our site plan. There's a detail of that. There we go. She's good. 8-foot agricultural style fencing.
And is it color? Is it black fencing? Is it wrought iron? What?
Wire fencing with like wooden posts.
And did you receive a copy of a recent letter from the Illinois Railway Museum for their comments?
I have not received that.
Do we want to provide them with a copy of this?
I have one right
Because
here.
it is an objection letter.
Okay.
I'll come around.
That might not work so well.
That's okay. And we can definitely, okay. Yeah, we can definitely review it and address it. I don't know what it says, but thank you.
I think it's the bottom paragraph you're most concerned with, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
The last paragraph.
Can we hear it?
In addition, project plans propose the ComEd interconnection at the northeast corner of the subject property. It should be made clear that the applicant for the project has not contacted IRM for access across museum-owned property, and at this time, seems like a speculative connection point. So I'll have to look into that. That was the point of interconnection provided in our application with ComEd. But we will review.
The other issue is the paragraph prior to that having to do with maintaining a rural viewscape. Have you ever run across something like that in your other projects?
So they're asking for additional screening along the north side of the project, that's what I understand. So on that, I guess the lease, if you can show the lease area, we're not leasing the area directly adjacent to the railway. It's just the point of interconnection that we're connecting to. So as far as visual screening, I take that back. There is, that does have, what is that? Sorry, go ahead, Carl.
No, there's no visual screening shown or anticipated to the
Okay.
east of the site, but we are, I believe, about 1,300 feet. We're pushing a quarter mile from the Illinois Railroad Museum there.
From the museum itself, but not its property and the rail line there that it operates on.
Correct. We're not. We're probably 600 feet or something like that south of the rail lines to the north, and then you're right. It is the Railroad Museum's property to the east. So we're maintaining the setback as required there, but no screen, not as shown today.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Mr. Eldridge?
Yes, to follow up on Mr. Smolinski, I think that you can draw an implication from the letter from the Railway Museum that they might not give you permission to cross their land with an interconnection. Would you in fact require such permission?
I need to review exactly where that land is. I'll have to review this letter in more detail to know where exactly the pole is relative to their property. Because it was my understanding that this is ComEd land that we would be connecting to or easement. So I have to look into more detail before I can give you a full response on that. I don't want to speculate.
And with regard to Northrop Road, roughly how far from Northrop Road are your nearest, the nearest part of your grid?
I think there might be on that drawing. Do you have the distance between Northrop and the panel arrays in there?
I don't believe we had it dimensioned here, but I'd say approximately 800 to 1,000 feet.
And is your property, it looks to me like it's probably a bit higher than Northrop Road. Is that correct, or am I reading this wrong? Well, I guess actually it varies somewhat depending on where you are.
But yeah, it certainly does vary. So somewhere around kind of the center of the property, if you were to split it with it, from top to bottom. So in the middle is where the drainage line comes through, where there's a wouldn't call it a regulated ditchway, but it's the wetland that we're looking at right here on the screen, or the floodplain that's showing there. So you can see the 842 mark. That generally aligns with a line straight to the east of the site. So the kind of entire site flows back to the north here. So they're about the same from Northrop Road to the site, if you're looking straight east, that is.
So when there were crops to the east of you, your site really would be invisible from Northrop Road, and when there were not crops, it would be visible.
Very much so, yes. With the height of the modules and trackers that are being proposed on this site of being somewhere around 9 feet, yes, absolutely.
Okay. It looks to me, looking at the site plan, that the only residence is the only residence that's anywhere close to the property is the residence that is owned by the landowner. Would that be correct?
Correct.
The other nearest residence probably is on the other side of Northrop Road, near that'll be the south end of your property. And then, of course, some residences along Prairie Street and Main Street near your access point.
Correct.
How wide is your access right away?
Well, the road right now, I believe, is somewhere around 16 feet at this time, and we're proposing to increase that width to 20 feet so that we're compliant with NFPA and fire access requirements.
So the road will be, but do you have a right-of-way that is wider than that?
I'd have to follow up on that one and take a look at the survey more closely to confirm that with you, but...
And will it be coextensive with the driveway to the residence?
Yes, that's correct. And I will say, just flipping over to my survey here, it's a 50-foot access easement there. So yes, it fits.
50 feet wide.
Yes.
But there aren't going to be side-by-side driveways to your place.
There will not be.
Yeah, just one driveway that'll serve both. Looking at the agrivoltaic issue, I presume that there is a significant diminution of the agricultural products that will come off the site once your grid is in place. Do you have any estimate of how that will be? What percentage a decline?
And reduction versus agrivoltaics versus no project at all? How
Yes.
much? I don't have a number. Do you have a number? Are you going to nod that percentage?
I don't have a number, but I think it's safe to say, you're not looking at corn being produced within here, right? So the change in products is, it's not.
So it is not suitable for traditional row crops, which is typical farming in this area.
We're currently proposing to plant hay and that in all these projects.
So a lower value product than the corn and beans that is typical?
As of right now, because we have both pollinators and agrivoltaics, the pollinator scorecard requires that we don't use pesticide or herbicide, so we have to use a crop that really doesn't need to have that for, really to destroy our
Yeah,
our pollinators. So
the-
right now, it's hay. As we work through the program with the state, we can change those crops that we plant there, and if there's a higher commodity crop, we can change it in the future, and that's our plan.
But as presently proposed and contemplated, it is hay, and you would agree that hay is a lower value crop than corn
I
and
guess it
beans?
depends. At the last county I did a presentation at, they were very excited about the hay because they were saying that they needed the feed, so.
Well, it may well need
Each their own.
need the feed, but it is,
Yeah,
its economic value is lower at the present time in this area.
correct. And as I mentioned, we're trying to work with the Illinois Pollinator Scorecard because really the state, excuse me, the state wants us to do both agrivoltaics and pollinators. So we have to develop a way, either we come up with crops that don't need to be treated, or we develop a way of somehow being able to not have drift occur from the crops that we're planting to the pollinators. But we have to develop this plan with the state so that they can adjust their pollinator scorecards, that we can check all the boxes. So right now, step one is to plant hay.
In some of the locations, I understand that companies like yours are putting their grid much higher so things can be operated underneath their panels. You have decided not to use that approach, is that correct?
Yes, so as you probably know, the higher the panels, the more visual concerns that can arise with that as well. So we do try to keep our panels low unless we're land constrained, and we have to do 2 panels per rack. So all these projects, we are leasing more land so that we can keep the height of these projects low. And as far as planting the crops, we've talked to farmers, and we've had our farm consultant out here actually going on to the tenant farmers' properties and looking at all their equipment that they're using to get a better idea of what would be required for our design, so that we can incorporate turn radiuses and all of the farming requirements, because I myself am not a farmer, our engineers aren't farmers, so we need to have all the people at the table designing these projects. So the spacing that we have right now takes into consideration a tractor can fit through it, and then an implement can follow and farm. And it may be we may have to switch things around in how we farm or modify our techniques. It's depending on what we're planting and time of year and all of the things. So we rely upon our experts to really help us with this, because as I said, I'm not an expert farmer nor are engineers, so we have to reach out to people that have the experience and do this day in and day out.
Now, these facilities, unlike wind facilities, require no guy wires or anything extending beyond the posts that would interfere with farming. Is that correct?
Correct. So there's motors on the racking, so there we don't have like a I don't know what it's called, like a
drive line.
Yeah, drive line. We don't have drive lines with these. So everything is already on the racking itself, and we're buried underneath ground, other than the risers at the point of interconnection.
There may be guy wires
Introduce
on.
yourself again.
Oh, sorry, Cammy Cohen from Lightstar. There may be guy wires on the poles that we need to install that lead to the point of interconnection with ComEdison's electrical grid, though. Just answering, since you asked specifically about guy wires.
But not associated with the grid itself?
No, not with the racking.
With the transmission poles?
Just with the
From the
poles.
site to the Commonwealth Edison interconnection point?
That's right, not associated with the racking.
Okay. That's all I have at this time.
Ms. Gardner.
Thank you. Now, you said that your intent was to not sell this particular business to another business. Is that right?
Correct. Yep. We own and operate all of our projects for the life of the
Okay.
project.
But, should the worst happen,
Mhm.
does that mean that if you have to sell, let's say 10 years up the road, this business has to be sold for one reason or another? No fault of your own, just has to happen. Does that mean that the 35 years begins over again, or is that then taken off of the next owner's amount of time in ground?
No, so the project, the application goes with the project. So it would be 35 years from installation of the project, or, yeah.
Yeah, Cami Cohen from Lightstar. So the lease agreement is between the project company or Illinois Solar 9000 LLC and the landowner or the landowner's trust with Mr. Grismer. So when and if we sell the project, all contracts as a party to the project will go to the next owner. But the owner will still own the project company and it will still be the same lease. So if it's in year 10, then that will be the year of the lease and it will stay year 10. It will not reset. Because the lease terms will not change, just parties to the lease.
Okay, so one way or the other, 35 years up the road, these things are down.
Right.
Yes.
Back to farms.
And in the lease agreement with the landowner or his trust, we actually have a commitment to decommission the property and restore it to its original state.
Okay.
I think we provided a copy of the lease. If not, we can.
Now, you brought up decommissioning. Can you tell me what's involved with that? Wait, let me ask another question first, because this will make more sense this way. Tell me about installing these panels. What kind of poles do you use? How do you secure them in the ground? And how long are they, underground, etc.?
Yeah, Carl Berber with Stantec again. So tell me if I need to elaborate on something. I might do too broad of an overview. But the piles are installed along what's called a tracker. A tracker is a long rod that sits essentially horizontal to the ground, and the modules or the panels are mounted to the top of that. Each one of those rods might be somewhere around, they're hundreds of feet long, right? And they are supported off the ground by piles, like you said. Those piles probably going to go into the ground somewhere around 6 or 8 feet deep. And then they'll extend maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 feet above the ground, just depending on the area.
Okay, time.
Yep.
How do those piles get driven into the ground?
Just as you say, they'd be driven in a typical situation. There are some alternatives to driven piles. There might be screw piles or something like that. And that all depends on the geotechnical conditions of the existing soils there. So the strength of the soils. So we'll evaluate when it comes time for construction whether there's enough strength there to prevent those modules from catching wind and tipping over in some sort of high wind event like we've recently had around here.
Yeah. Now, if they have to be driven in, I mean, that's like a pile driver to drive them in, is that right?
That's correct.
And there's a noise factor with that?
To be honest, I haven't gone and listened. There's a Alliant Energy site going in right near my house. I don't notice anything from it, but they are essentially a truck-mounted, like very small, let's say somewhere around a pickup truck size. It's not like the gigantic pile drivers that you see on interstate construction where they're like, ba-bam, ba-bam, for hours and hours on end. It's not like that. We're talking about much smaller pieces of structural steel.
Okay. So this should not, the noise should not spread beyond the site very much, is that right?
Right. So in a situation like this, I think we're in a very prime location where you're almost a quarter mile from anything, so you're going to have a lot of dissipation of that sound as you get off of the property.
Okay, and it won't make the ground shake like whatever was shaking the roof here?
No, that would be a bad condition. We're looking at a site in Hawaii, and there's a lot of hard bedrock there.
Yeah.
We don't anticipate this here, but in a situation like that is where you start getting like reverberations and such. But that would be a bad situation if we found that here.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now, we have a lot of gravel as far as I understand. Now, getting back to the decommissioning, can somebody describe how that takes place?
Yeah. So the decommissioning plan, in general, the entire idea is that we put the site back the exact same way that it was found. There are some circumstances where decommissioning doesn't require that you remove wire or concrete, things of that nature, that are beyond 3 feet below the surface. Sometimes, well, let's say 4 feet, and sometimes there are ordinances that will require that you go to 3 feet. You don't leave anything, at that level. In our circumstance, we're not going to have anything that we want to leave on the site. There's no advantage to leaving cables behind. There's recycling value afforded to those, and all the piles that will be driven beyond that 3 or 4 feet deep are of recycling value as well. That's some of the highest value product here. So they're going to come out at one piece when the contractor comes through and pulls them.
I have to say that's good to hear, because we have heard of companies that just kind of shear them off at ground level.
Right. No, so because there's no concrete on the bottom of them, it makes it a lot easier. So it's going to be a matter of connecting up. It's the reverse operation is installing.
Okay, so you kind of went through the screening, and is there going to be any lighting on the site?
No lighting proposed, no.
Not at all, even
None.
on the driveway or the entrance?
None.
Okay, none, okay. Can't read my own writing. Oh, just for the sake of the people here, I know you went through the fencing and what it would look like, but could you give a more detailed description of the fencing so people will understand what they would be looking at?
So, yeah, I guess I want to get back to that detail. It's kind of shown in this detail here.
Yeah.
I guess so. It's wood posts and metal fencing, typical like ag style.
Yeah, we're showing a fixed knot wire mesh and or approved equal is what we say. But the wire mesh is a 5-inch by 5-inch nominal size, just a crossing pattern.
So it's 5 inches by 5 inches, okay.
Yes.
So it's definitely see-through?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, I don't care, I just wonder, I think other people might wonder as well. Also, now these are tilting panels, is that correct?
Yes, they're on a tracker, so they tilt,
Okay.
follow the sun.
All right, so there's a motor that tilts them?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Now, is there any noise associated with all these motors?
No, so there's all the equipment that we use is, we have specs for that show that, that it doesn't exceed, like background noise levels. So any sort of farming that would be occurring would be far louder than, what this site would generate. Sources of noise would include just really the inverters, the transformers, and then those motors. And your transformers are probably the most noisy, and they're like your typical pad-mounted transformers that you see probably outside this building even. So if you don't notice those, you're probably not going to notice.
So it's kind of like the sound of an air conditioner or something like that?
Probably even less.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Now, is there going to be any security for this site, either on-site or off-site?
So there will be a lockbox per, I think, one of our details that we show. So it will be, the site will be inaccessible for the public to access, but we will have a box there so that if anybody, as far as emergency, people need to get to the site, then you can get to the site.
Yeah, on the next slide, I'm not sure if you have it on the next slide, but it shows.
Yeah, you left that one.
You left it out. Yeah, the next slide shows the gate, and the typical gate includes a Knox box along with it.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Mr. Schnabel.
Do I have permission to make a brief statement before I ask the question?
Do whatever you want.
Not according to the state of Illinois. That's the comment that I'd like to make for the benefit of the public that's here, and even the petitioners that are here, with the recent changes to the state, that the state has promulgated and basically forced upon us. We are no longer as able as we once were to ask for certain changes and specifications, relating to landscaping and so on and so forth. We seem to be quite restricted now as to what we can even ask the petitioner for. I would just like to read a paragraph from the Illinois Railway Museum letter, which I don't believe has been generally distributed to the public. They may be interested to hear their side of it, so to speak. This was sent to me from David Diamond. He's general manager facilities at the museum. He's been with the museum a long time. The letter states one paragraph, IRM has owned this parcel for many years and has long planned expansion of museum-related functions onto the parcel. Activities and attractions could include construction and installation of a historic 120-foot locomotive turntable preserved from a railroad yard in Denver, Colorado, installation and expansion of IRM's streetcar line, railroad yards, visitor walkways, and other historic attractions. Additionally, our museum main railroad line extends along the northern boundary of the property where your interconnect is proposed to go currently, upon which we operate historic train rides, including Thomas the Tank Engine, bringing tens of thousands to McHenry County. And I'm almost done with this. Our primary concern about the proposal is the view of the pastoral agricultural scenery, which has long been part of the experience provided by a visit to IRM, not be adversely impacted. The concept of the solar installation with adequate distances from IRM property lines and significant screening are essential to maintaining the rural viewscape. That's what Mr. Eldridge referred to earlier. I just wanted to clarify that for everyone, that the museum does not take the stance necessarily that they are opposed to this project. However, they are asking for at least your consideration if this project were to go ahead, if you would consider in their idea, they'd like to ask for screening across the northern border, where I believe on the previous panel it showed that the panels are only about 154 feet from their property line where they propose to expand in the future, on the assumption that by the time they develop that land with these tourist activities and so forth, and quite honestly, this museum is probably one of the largest tourist destinations in the entire county of McHenry. I would hope that they could have some due consideration for such a buffer to be installed in the future as this were to be developed, so it would have time to mature and so forth, to mitigate that concern that they have, as they are a longtime resident of McHenry County. And I just wanted to ask for that possibility to be considered by you as the petitioners. Other than that, that is my question, if you'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, that's definitely something we can consider. We do landscape screening on all sorts of our projects. I don't see why that would be an issue here. Obviously, I'd have to get approval internally, but that shouldn't be an issue.
I will withhold any other questions that I have until a later time. Thank you.
Oh, I have so many questions. Okay. So you testified that the state wants you to do agrivoltaics and pollinator-friendly habitat. But according to the Community Solar Scorecard, they also want you to site things on disturbed land, brownfield sites, and R3 areas. So this is, just to clarify, this is an incentive offered to get more points so that the likelihood that the project will be approved by the Illinois Power Agency.
Yeah, and I don't know if my words were that they want us to. They provide us a point criteria for, and the minimum amount of points that we can get a project in the state of Illinois to build a project is 5 points minimum. So we have really, we have an origination team at Lightstar that goes and looks for where our projects are located. We don't have a lot of choice based on landowners, other environmental restrictions, trees. There's a variety of different reasons why we pick the sites that we do pick. We do have some brownfield sites that we are looking at as well. So yeah, to answer your question, it is for these specific projects, and really all of our Illinois projects, we're choosing those 2 points for agrivoltaics and pollinators because those are pretty good projects. And basically what the state is doing is they're incentivizing good projects. They don't want projects that are just thrown into the ground without consideration of design criteria and locations. So yeah, so for these projects, since we can't get points for a variety of the other siting requirements, we're choosing to do agrivoltaics and pollinators.
McHenry County has historically not permitted agrivoltaics because we had our solar siting memorandum, and because they're kind of inconsistent with one another. So the pollinator standards that are in the pollinator checklist include plants like milkweed. You have to count how much milkweed you put in. Milkweed is toxic for horses, so your hay would be inconsistent with livestock uses. And if you're doing the pollinator buffer, many of the more common pollinator plants are actually inconsistent with hay because they will drift and you will end up with hay that's no good, that'll kill livestock. So that's why McHenry County has really specific standards for our seed mixes that we like to see on these sites, because we have an amazing staff here at the county, and they've gone through and figured out what works here and what will return the land to farming after it's finished. So at the end of the 35 years, the native species that are on this list in the memorandum are really easily removed and the land can return to row crops.
Right.
This list is also consistent with the pollinator scorecard that you've referenced and with the Pollinator Act. So the Pollinator Act is 525 ILCS 55/1, and it doesn't have any specific seed mix lists. It says that it should be native species without noxious weeds, and that's this list.
That's your list you're referring to? Absolutely, yeah, and we have no problem at all incorporating whatever is recommended by the counties. In fact, all of our projects, we generally reach out to the local soil and water conservation districts for specified seed mixes, because, you know, being a company that has projects in multiple states, that we don't know exactly what would work best. And it's definitely better for us if we know what works in this local area versus having to try and figure out and guess and fail.
Right. So I just wanted to cite also the new state law is 55 ILCS 5/5-12020. Under Section R, the county is not required to approve agrivoltaic projects. We can require a commercial solar energy facility to plant, establish, and maintain for the life of the facility vegetative ground cover consistent with the goals of the Pollinator-Friendly Solar Site Act. We can require the submittal of a vegetation management plan in the application to construct, which would be the building permit phase, and operate a commercial solar energy facility in this county. So for the benefit of my fellow board members, McHenry County has never permitted agrivoltaics, and under the new state law, we don't have to. Another question that I had for you is, how many projects do you have that are up and running in Illinois?
None to date. So the program for community solar was just opened in November 1st of this past year. So that was the first block. So in order to be able to apply for one of the adjustable blocks, you have to have your land use permits complete, and the next block opening is in June 1st of this year.
Right, okay. And is it written in your lease that you're able to, I know that Vicki would ask questions about this, because you do own and operate your own facilities, but you don't have any in Illinois yet. Is it written in your lease that you can sell and that the requirements of the lease will transfer and all of that? It's written in your lease that you can transfer the property, right?
Hi, this is Cami coming from MindStar. Yes, I believe that there's a section that allows assignment with consent of the landowner to other parties, which would, instead of, it's not a sale, but it's an assignment of the owners of the project company. Yes, I believe that's a standard in our lease.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've done, Jackie, the sale lights there. And we've done the assignments. I guess I was confused by your question. We've done those assignments for other projects. As we get financing for projects, we have to change them into their own project-specific LLCs. And there's notification to the landowner, and we're required to, still under the same Lightstar owner, but they're project-specific LLCs.
Okay. I think that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
That wasn't too bad.
Mr. Aldridge, you have another question?
Yes. Do you have an option to extend your lease beyond the 35 years?
No, so we have an option to extend our option. So right now, we have a 1-year option to lease, and then we extend those for 2 1-year terms.
Okay, but you do not have the right, without further consent from the landowner, to extend beyond the 35 years, rebuild the facility. as some leases have the right to go for another 30 or 40 years.
Cami from Landstar. So I'm not sure how many lease extension options are available in our lease with Mr. Guzman or his trust. It could be 35, it could be 45. So we would have to take a look and see how many extension periods are available for the lease term, the operating lease term.
But not more than 45 years.
It's definitely not more than 45 because I believe that you're not allowed to have a lease more than 45 years for solar projects because it conflicts with some IRS rule.
Okay, and you don't have any options beyond that?
No, 45 years would be the absolute max in our leases.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a few questions, kind of based on some of the questions that Ms. Beverly had. So, you know, the whole idea of the pollinators maybe being an issue with the hay. Do you have hay in any other states? Have you done this successfully?
No, because we haven't done both pollinators and agrivoltaics in other states, and it's, like I said, we have a farm consultant that is currently working on our farm plan. We're also working with the American Farmland Trust to also actually have a meeting with them next week to really discuss this with the Illinois Pollinator Scorecard, because the state does, they want both agrivoltaics and they do want pollinators, and trying to get those to work together, we have to come up with some sort of, whether it's an approved species list or a way to avoid drift between what we're growing and the pollinators. But we've sought out the professionals that know the best. We have an agreement with American Farmland Trust, so we rely upon those experts to help us with those things. But right now, since we're at this point of design, we're doing what we can, so it's hay, and the policies haven't changed yet, so it's hay and it's the pollinators. And as I mentioned, I'm happy to review whatever local seed mixes that would work best in this area.
Yeah, our county was really diligent in coming up with a really good seed mix that has been used in other places, and it's really worked well. And so I'm wondering if we did not want you to do agrivoltaics and do just really the pollinators, how does that affect your point system then with the state?
So it would be one less point. So agrivoltaics, we need a minimum of 5. And to remove the agrivoltaics would be down 1. And we have a team policy manager who would be very disappointed at that. She, in all seriousness, that's kind of been our goal at Lightstar, is to produce projects, because as I mentioned, like, these projects are generally developed on ag land. If you develop them in the wooded areas, then you're removing trees. And if you're developing them in wetlands, then you're impacting those resources. So really the best location that we find for solar isn't on open ag fields. And we want to do good by that and develop on prime farm soils that are also generating a crop. So really that's our goal.
Linnea, if I could add, that the community solar programs are also awarded points for different things in addition to siting, including using equity eligible contractors and product developments through approved vendors. So there's different ways to make up those points when you're choosing contractors.
Correct. So the equity eligible contractors, I will say, is a very difficult program because there aren't many equity eligible contractors that are available for us to use. So to collect a point for that would be difficult. Not to say it's impossible, and as this program develops further, there could be more registered equity eligible contractors. And believe me, we would look into any other alternative for selecting our points that we can. For these projects, the only one that we really can't do is the siting, because the locations have already been cited. But any other, as far as the equity eligible contractors, pollinators, agrivoltaics, location in McHenry County gives us 2 points. I think that's the other bucket.
I think you mentioned one more, working with an approved vendor.
Yeah, working with approved vendors.
But I think you have to have like a 50% rec value with the approved vendor. So we are definitely looking into those options to get additional points. It's just a matter of getting those registered contractors and making sure that they can build our projects.
Okay, you mentioned the lease terms with the landowner. So there are things that we can't require of you, but in your lease with the landowner, there might be some things that they require you to do as far as decommissioning or other sorts of things, correct?
Correct. I think in our language for these Illinois projects, we do have some language for decommissioning. But as far as the decommissioning plan itself and the bond would be hosted with the county. We also have some language about, let's see what I was going to say, decommissioning and, I lost my train.
Restoration.
No, I lost my train of thought. What was the other?
Well, I just wondered if there were any terms in the lease. You mentioned that you share the lease, and I don't know, we don't want to get into, monetary things or anything, but if there's anything in the lease that is a stronger language than what the state requires, that would be beneficial for us to know that this is something that you'll be held to, I think it would be helpful for us to see that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Cami from Lightstar. I believe, and I could always check, I believe that we were asked to keep 100-foot setback from all property lines with Mr. Guzmer and his trust for his properties in the lease. So that is, I believe, something that is stricter than any regulation from property line setback with the county or the state. There's nothing else that comes to mind that would have been more restrictive that the landowner requested than you all did or the state. But as mentioned, we're happy to submit the lease to you for your own consideration if we didn't already.
And my thought came back. We do have also some language in there about drain tile repair and replacement if they're damaged.
Okay, and I saw that in the email report as well.
Correct, in the email report?
AMA.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Yep,
Through the Department of Agriculture.
yes.
Okay, staff, had any questions for the petitioner?
Just one question, just for clarification on the site plan. So in that northeast corner where it shows that hatching kind of along the corner there, was that intended to be a vegetative buffer just for that section? Because I don't see it labeled.
When I was looking at this yesterday, I was not aware that there was landscaping, and I confirmed with our consultant, but looking at that, I believe that they did decide to incorporate it, so I just...
Yeah, I think you have a newer plan than me, so. I don't have it on the plan set, nor was it on the plan set that was submitted, but it was included
You've
in the
indicated
presentation.
as well that you'd be okay with extending that along the north and the east if it was conditioned to be part of
Yeah,
that?
we can consider that.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Any follow-up questions on members of the board? Okay, so any member of the public that would have a question regarding the testimony that's been given, you have an opportunity right now to ask questions. So when you come up to ask your question, I need you to identify yourself with your name and your address, and then you can go ahead with your questions. And I will ask that, we not be repetitive with the same things, but you're free to ask your
My
questions. So
name
go
is
ahead.
Ken Merritt, 7516 North Hill, Durango, Illinois. Been in the area, bought my first lot with my wife in 1980. Beautiful area near Coral Woods. My question is for the engineer. And our area of northern Illinois had experienced very large hail in the last week. As large, if you listen to some of the weather people on TV, and they showed pictures of it, at least ping pong balls, in some cases tennis balls. So do you have the specifications and the tests of the impact strength and the durability of the glass in the panels? Have they been tested for hail the size of tennis balls? Thank you.
Do you know?
I do know that we do have spec sheets that they are tested for like the weights of snow. I can check to see if there's anything specific to hail, but I don't have that off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Anyone else have any questions regarding the testimony that's been given?
Lori Cisneros, 9908 Harmony Hill Road, Marengo. You mentioned that one of the reasons landowners do this because of the cost of farming and it's getting tougher. So what are they getting, what is the cost they get to lease this land? Or, per acre, what are they,
So you're at where our lease payment is?
Yeah, so what is how is the land, so what do they get?
I'm not sure that we can
you
say
can't
that normally.
disclose that?
Yeah, I think that's normally redacted information that we can't disclose.
Okay, so then, the $800 over 35 years, is that property tax you're saying now?
Yes, $800,000.
Okay, so that calculates out to roughly, for one that's $822,000 a year, correct?
Mhm.
Which I'm pretty positive that's not the property tax on farmland now. And I guess, I'm
Right.
assuming.
It changes when it becomes electrified. The property taxes go up because it's generating electricity, right?
Beverly, you need to identify yourself.
Excuse me, Jessica Beverly.
Okay, so I guess what I'm asking, so for our township or the county, are we getting more tax dollars because of this? And I guess you answer that first.
Yeah, Cami from Lightstar. So it's an ad valorem property tax. So basically they're looking at what is the cost of the solar equipment and then how much of that can they, or all of that essentially is being added to the value of the property. And the portion that is attributable to the solar plant only we pay to the county and to other taxing jurisdictions. So if the value of the property right now is $1 million and we add a $10 million solar plant, then that $10 million becomes taxable. So it's an additional $10 million valuable tax asset. So yes, the property taxes increase.
Okay, and then any of the incentives you're talking about, are there any that are financial incentives for the state? Because I know there are now for private, residents. Any of these incentives that are going on through the state, do you also benefit from that financially? I mean, will that lower? Okay.
Yes, so basically, we sell each megawatt hour of electricity to ComEd, and ComEd essentially pays us through the state program. It's about $40 per megawatt hour, and that comes to the asset owner in the form of a financial incentive.
Okay, but I guess I wasn't clear. So there is no tax incentive. So so your property went up $11 million, let's just say. There's no tax incentives now to bring that back down to.
No,
Okay.
the tax incentives are provided by the IRS, and they're provided in the form of income tax incentives. So 30% of the cost of the system is basically returned in the form of an income tax credit to the asset owner, but it would not impact the property taxes paid on the value of the solar project.
Okay.
And depreciation is another income tax incentive provided by the IRS.
Okay, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other members of the public have questions?
Sure. Good afternoon, Ray O'Connor, 15004 Hemmingson Road, Huntley, Illinois. We're having a fence around that property. Is it going to be just around the solar array or down the road also? Or is it not going to be a fence around the property?
I believe the gate is at the solar array, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So it starts at the solar array. The driveway will not be gated because the driveway is actually the same driveway that's connecting to the residence there.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Any other questions? Okay, so you have another witness.
Oh, me, no.
So this is the end of your testimony, you have no other?
This is the end of my testimony for Northrop.
Okay. So at this point, we'll start with testimony from members of the public, starting with the staff. So Kim, you want to go through your staff report with us?
Okay, so as we mentioned, the property is zoned A1 agricultural. It is also surrounded by agricultural zoning in the area there with a little bit of the Village of Union just to the north and west of the site. Our current land use is all agricultural in this area as well. Future land use does designate for residential at this location. These are mostly all touched on already. I just had a couple of photos of the site just to show the access being into the site here. And as I had mentioned previously, there's not a lot that we can say to stray from what the state has put forward. We do feel that this is consistent with and very similar to many of the other requests that we've gotten in similar type areas. They do meet all of the siting requirements outlined by the state, and we don't have any objections.
Okay, so in your staff report, you had some conditions for us, for the board's consideration.
Yes.
Those will not be changed, maybe added to, based on what the petitioners said they're willing to do with screening?
Correct. These are pretty standard and in line with what we have in our Unified Development Ordinance, as well as what the state laws outline. But if you did have any additional conditions, you can add on to that.
Okay. Do any members of the board have any questions for staff? Okay, so then at this point, any member of the public that would like to make a statement, here's your opportunity to do so regarding this petition. So if anyone would like to, you're welcome to come up to the microphone, identify yourself, and then you can make your statement.
Thank you. My name is Nick Callis. I'm the Executive Director at the Illinois Railway Museum. And you folks have gotten the letter. We do not object to this project. We just want to reiterate about the screening and the viewscape. And this particular project, the screening, I believe they talked about it being on the east side, but also on the north side of the project itself. The railroad, because the railroad is running at a diagonal, they had the foresight in the old days to screw up the county and the land system and run their tracks at diagonals so that people's properties are on both sides of the track. And so that's the foresight of our fathers, of our forefathers. But on our particular situation, where it says Union Pacific Railroad, we have the railroad on the other side of the Union Pacific. And so screening on the north side of the project also would protect the viewscape. So as an organization, we don't object to this project, just want to protect the viewscape. Thank you.
Anyone else have a comment?
I was going to wait to the end, but I may as well just do it now. I know what I'll be the other one. This is done. There we go. So I just wanted to, Lori Cisneros, 9908 Harmony Hill Road. So I just wanted to share, 3 years ago, or prior to COVID, I think I was here and talked about solar farms in our community then, and it all had to do with location. And I still think that's a big key with some of this. So I wanted to share some thoughts from the American Planning Association on location, visual impacts, which is the viewscape.
But you understand the new state law has impacted that, right?
You think all of it?
Yeah.
I'm going to read it anyway.
Okay.
So a location of facilities is still important in evaluating a site. They should be located in areas where it's difficult to detect and prior to the land use be marginal. Proposed facilities adjacent to corporate boundaries, public right-of-ways, or recreation are likely to be more controversial and should not change the character of the area. Visual impacts has to do with the viewscape. The visual impact of solar facilities can significantly minimize the effective screening and buffering, but this is more challenging in historic or scenic landscapes. Solar facilities adjacent to byways or historic corridors may negatively impact the rural aesthetic. And I think that'll have to do with the one on Route 20. Finally, the recreational resource statement states that every proposed site should maybe undergo an evaluation to identify cultural resources or near the facilities. Tourism is recognized as a key sector for economic growth in many regions, and I think especially that's true here in McHenry County. And a solar facility that might be visible from a scenic byway historic site or similar place could have negative consequences. So a solar facility located by itself, maybe in a rural area close to major transmission lines and not permanently visible from public right-of-ways, may be the place to locate a solar farm. And if the state's screwed all that up, then I'm sorry.
We are too.
So am I.
Okay. So do you have a closing statement?
I do not. If there's any questions or any of the audience would like to reach out, I can leave some cards here for anybody to contact me.
I have a question of you.
Sure, go ahead.
In view of the fact that they need to look further into this northern boundary of their section, do we need to continue to vote on this one?
I think we do. I think we need to continue the hearing so you can check into that access point with ComEd where you might have to cross the railroad property or see how that would be dealt with. As well as there was a question about the panels that a member of the public said that you provide that information to them. And then as far as the agrivoltaics and the American Farmland Trust and the different point systems, how you might maybe deal with that if the county did not want you to use agrivoltaics. If you can provide us, some kind of information as to what you could do then as an alternative to that to still get your points in. It's possible.
Yeah, I mean, if we wouldn't be able to get the point for the agrivoltaics, we can always design a project that didn't have agrivoltaics. It would be, honestly, it's cheaper for us, and it's, in my opinion, for a solar developer, that's kind of the ideal thing, is to not have to deal with the spacing and farming equipment. But really, we with these projects, we want to accommodate our landowners as well and the current tenant farmers. So that would be something that we'd have to discuss internally, I think. I think we're pretty set at least doing half of the project as agrivoltaics. So yeah, I can provide a summary though, or a statement.
Okay. So for this petition, we will continue this.
So just to clarify, we need to show that ComEd owns has an easement right for the full width of the railroad.
And we can use any Wednesday if you want, because we're pretty booked up on our Thursday hearings through May 4th.
Mr. Cozen is absent that day.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
If we wanted to be able to vote on it again.
We can do any Wednesday between now and then, or if you think that you would want to double it up with,
So we could do it, we could possibly do it like the 19th of this month.
I will not be present on the 19th.
Okay.
I'll be in Springfield.
How about the 10th of May?
Fine.
May 10th is open, if that works for everybody.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question for all. Yeah. There was a tentative rumbling about something happening on April 26th. Is there still anything tentatively rumbling with that?
No, that applicant needed to provide some additional information, so that date is still open.
It's
It's not going to happen, probably.
That's a Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be better for me.
The 26th?
Yeah.
So we could also do it on April 26th?
Yeah, that's available.
Would that work good for the petitioner?
Yeah.
That's a Wednesday.
So instead of the May 10th?
Correct. Okay, so this petition then will be continued until April 26th.
Can we have a short time out?
Yeah, we'll take a short break and then we'll move on to the other two petitions.
Okay.
we'll consider is petition 2023-006. This is part of PIN number 17-08-300-018. The address is West Coral Road and South Grant Highway, Marengo, Illinois. The property consists of approximately 40 acres and is located at the southwest corner of the intersection of West Coral Road and South Grant Highway in Coral Township, Illinois. The applicant is Illinois Solar 9000 LLC, and the request is for a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. And again, you're waiving the reading of the petition.
This is Cami from, This is Cami from Landstar. Yes, we can waive that, thank you.
Okay, so we'll just turn it over to you, whatever you want to incorporate from the last hearing and whatever additional information you'd like to give us.
Sure. I'll try to keep it brief. There are a couple of specifics for this project that don't apply to the previous one, so I'll just go through those. As you can see on the screen over here, the South Grant Highway project is proposed within the blue lease area. The parcel area is outlined in yellow, and the proposed access road is outlined in red. We have the blue area under an option to lease agreement with Leach Roads Enterprises as the current owner of the property, and the access road under an easement with an option to easement with Leach Road Enterprises LLC. The developable area for the project is around 40 acres out of the 69 total acreage of the parcel. The project parcel is currently zoned A1, and solar installations are allowed in this district, much like the previous project, by site plan approval and conditional use permit. And that's what we're here to discuss with the commissioners today. Thank you. You can go to the next slide. So this is a more detailed overview of the project. It is proposed to be around the same size as the previous one, so about 4.95 megawatts AC and just under 7.5 megawatts DC. The main access road to the project is shown on the northern boundary from Coral Road. We did get a comment about needing to add 2 additional access roads. So instead of adding 2 additional access roads, we're proposing to shift the one that's shown on the northern boundary a little bit farther south to utilize the existing curb cut coming from Coral Road. And then we did speak with our electrical engineer about if we really do need 2 access roads, because they had originally proposed a second one on the eastern border because we have a second electrical equipment pad and the fire department would likely want access to the equipment pad. So instead of having a second access road as shown on the eastern boundary, we can instead extend the access road on the northern boundary so that the access road snakes up and around and then leads back to the equipment pad. So that would alleviate the need for 2 additional access roads and instead utilize 1 existing access road. So that is how we intend to address the comment that came from the McHenry County Department of Transportation regarding too many access points on this property. You can see on the south there is a delineated wetland, which the Stantec biological team delineated for the project. As a result of finding delineated wetlands here, we did push the project boundary further north to avoid any impact. We did see in the comments that there was reference to a 100-foot buffer from any delineated wetlands, so we will look into the county ordinance to make sure that we're abiding by any regulations that are within the county code and make adjustments to the site plan if necessary. Okay. So the completed studies, much like the previous one, are the wetland delineations, as I just mentioned. The threatened and endangered species review was both the state through the EcoCat review, which determined that there are going to be no impacts to any listed species, so the consultation has been terminated. A desktop review with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife has been conducted as well, which shows that the species listed there have the potential to occur, and further consultation with the Fish and Wildlife Service will be completed. If they request us to do habitat assessment surveys, we will do so for any species, and if they require any incidental take permits, we will also abide by the requirement to do those, but that has not been initiated yet. Much as Jackie mentioned, since we're not impacting any wetlands or tree clearing, we don't anticipate impacts to many of the species. For bumblebees, dragonflies, and butterflies, the incorporation of the pollinating species would foster habitat for these species and hopefully help with the protection and not to their detriment. As far as cultural goes, this project was deemed not required to complete a cultural resource survey through consultation with the Illinois State Historic Preservation Office, so it is not anticipated that we would complete a phase 1 archaeological survey on this project. The pollinator scorecard is obviously still under review as we work through how to incorporate crops under the array and pollinators within the buffer areas if possible. And we did receive the NRI LISA from the Soil and Water Conservation District, and the recommendations are included in this slide. Thank you. So this site scored 78.41 out of 100. And the recommendations from the Soil and Water Conservation District, they had mentioned that the access road was not presented to them, and so they want to ensure that the access road does not impact any sensitive communities such as wetlands, floodplains, and buffer areas. Our wetland delineation and floodplain review did include the access road, so we believe that we are not impacting wetlands, floodplains, and buffer areas for the access road, much like we don't plan to for the rest of the project. They would like us to protect drain tiles, which we have committed to under the lease agreement with the landowner, and also will commit to a drain tile survey to ensure that our piles are not going to drive through existing drain tiles. And then they also asked for the native planting / prairie mix, which we would love to see what McHenry County, what research you have all done so we can incorporate whichever species you know best works in your area. And we commit to doing that as well. And then they also
So are you saying that you're willing to, that if we have a condition that you would use our seed mix?
Yes, and like Jackie said, we would look to you as the experts rather than trying to reinvent the wheel ourselves happily. And then they also asked us that the agricultural impact mitigation agreement be completed. We've already executed that, and we will send it to them for their counter signature as well. So the rest of the summary that Jackie provided, which is basically a summary of the comments provided from all the agencies, I believe that you all have those as well, so I don't want to take up your time and go through them here. So I'll leave it at that for the presentation on this project specifically, and we can open it up if that works for you.
And it's fair to say that we incorporate all your previous testimony in general about the solar projects and how they're constructed and everything into this petition.
Exactly. All 3 projects have all the exact same characteristics besides the site location themselves.
As well as the standards, meeting the standards to the ordinance?
Yes, as well as meeting the standards to the ordinance. This project did have proposed landscape screening. If you wanted to flip back to the site plan really quickly, because I know the previous project, it wasn't very clear. So we have the neighboring residences that are outside of the parcel itself. Any that are within 500 feet, we do have vegetative landscape screening provided, and we have ensured that the project boundaries are greater than 300 feet from any neighboring residences as is required by the McHenry County ordinance.
Anything else?
That's it for right now, unless you have further questions.
Okay, I'll start on my right this time. Ms. Beverly.
Thank you. And the landscape siting, excuse me, the landscape screening that you were proposing was the same list that you showed us last time?
Right.
Okay. And I just want to clarify that there is no listed seed mix in this memo specifically. It says that you must consult with. There's a list of species that you're not allowed to have in your seed mix. Highly invasive species that we've been working on getting out of our thing, our woods and our wetlands and all of that. The requirements in this memo are that you consult with the Department of Planning staff on your landscape plan and your seed mix. They have a lot of experience doing this and many years experience. Then they'll know exactly what you should use and who you should use. I think that's all I have.
Yeah, great, and I would love their email specifically, unless in the recommendations, the email is written down, and we'll definitely reach out and consult them on the vegetation plan.
Yeah, can we be able to get it for you?
So you're asking Kim if she can provide that?
Right, yeah.
Yes, I will email that over to you. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes, hello again. Looking at the road you have proposed on the eastern entrance off of 20, I'm looking at the aerial map. Just to the east of that proposed driveway, if you will, it shows an array, and on the aerial survey it shows that it's over high-quality wetland. Just wondering what your parameters are for installing solar array over high-quality wetland as shown on the aerial picture, because I observed that you were careful enough to avoid putting the driveway through a high-quality wetland. You're bordering its north and western border. But when I go back to the original plan with the road installed, it still shows panels in the high-quality wetland. Just wondered what kind of issues that may or may not cause.
Do you want to take?
Sure. Hi, Carl Robert with Stantec. So our wetland delineators who are licensed came out and actually walked the site and delineated wetland back further. So it is shown on the existing conditions plan. We can review this and just confirm that is, you know, what is truly out there. But sometimes the aerial imagery, which is oftentimes done through spectral analysis or some sort of flight, right, is looking for certain signatures. Once they walk the ground, they can find something different.
Well, I question that a little bit. When would that survey have been conducted in your best guess opinion?
I think we have that written down on the plan somewhere.
I won't hold you to the exact date, time, and hour, but maybe month of what year?
Yep, November of 2022. Excuse me, that is...
This past November, basically?
Yeah, wetland delineation it took place in November of 22.
Okay, I would just like to make a comment onto that because this county's basically been in a pretty bad drought for the past 2 years plus, nowhere near the normal water tables. Creek and river levels have been way down from what you will normally find. I think only in recent couple of weeks have things started to come up to the point where they're even maybe thinking about potentially flooding over if we do finally have some heavier rain. But I don't want that to be just glossed over because we've not had normal conditions here for the past couple of years. And I would, knowing this county, having lived here for 30 years, I would tend to trust this more than I would say someone saying it doesn't look like it ever floods here, especially when the low spot is shown at 880 feet in the lower right-hand corner, and the area of high-quality wetlands is supposedly 888 feet. I can see flooding potential to that effect take place relatively easily here. But that's just my comment and subject to your careful thought and review. I'll move on, please. Go ahead.
Ms. Gardner?
Thank you. Are you also planning the agrivoltaic plan for this site?
Yes, we do plan to incorporate agrivoltaics on at least 50% of each project.
Okay. Now, all right, this is sort of a, you don't have to answer this if you don't want, it's just my curiosity. If you don't do the agrivoltaic plan, that would give you actually extra room, would it not? For either panels or to use a smaller amount of space?
Exactly, either or. So either we could tighten up the rows and add more rows to have a bigger project, or we could tighten up the rows and be taking up less surface area for the project. We would not increase the project size on these because the Illinois Adjustable Block Program only allows only allows a 5 megawatt AC project, which these are already at. So going bigger would just mean we're paying for more equipment and not being able to generate electricity from it.
So the state is stopping you from doing things as well?
That's true.
Okay. Now, my last question is another one, just curiosity. This site will also be completely fenced all the way around as the other one?
Yeah,
Same type of fencing?
exactly.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Eldridge.
Yes. I think your testimony was that you weren't going to have the 2 access points, but a single road, is that correct?
That's correct.
So that this map isn't really accurate.
Yeah,
Could you just sort of show me on that
Could you just walk
roughly
up there?
where the road is going to go?
So this existing access road will be
Yeah.
moved slightly south
Yeah.
to use the existing access road curb cut. And then the road will extend around the perimeter up, down here, and to the second equipment pad. So it will be one looping access road, and this, we will get rid of this.
So you will not have an
entrance.
access to Grant Highway,
This, I mean, no,
Yeah.
there will be no, we're willing to get rid of that.
just Coral Road.
Yes.
All right, thank you, that was my only question.
Mr. Smolinski.
Is the landowner for this site occupying one of the residences?
Yes. Oh, no.
There's 2 residences on this site.
The residences on the northern portion, were at the very,
Yes,
I believe that that's part of this parcel, so.
Right, it's part of
is
the
it-
parcel.
You have you own the house and it's a tenant,
There's a 10 there.
yeah.
in the one that's to the west or the one to the east? The one to the west?
The one to the west and the east are off of our parcel, and so they are
Correct.
owned.
I know they're off of your,
Yeah.
what you're after here. I just wanted to know, does the owner of this property live on the site or not?
No,
Tenants again. And is either the tenants farming this land? No, someone else is. I have no further questions.
Mr. Posen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To clarify, the fence is inside the landscape buffer, meaning that the landscape buffer is on the opposing side of the fence? Is that correct interpretation of the illustration?
Yes, the landscape buffer is outside of the fence, so it's screening the fence.
And have you any experience or contemplating panels that can obtain current from the underside of the panels?
sorry, would you mind repeating that? I'm not sure. I understand. Oh, electrical current,
Yes, ma'am. I switched topics shortly there, I apologize.
no worries. So have we considered, sorry, just if you wouldn't
Yeah,
mind
have you
repeating that.
considered, or has your company had any experience of applying solar panels that also draw current from the underside of the panel?
Oh, yes, so we are proposing to use bifacial solar modules, is that what you're talking about?
If that's the word I was searching
Yeah.
for, that was the word?
Yes, so it is a more efficient solar panel that's able to take advantage of the albedo or the reflection off of the ground and draw power or draw sunlight from the bottom of the ground so that there's more energy produced per square inch on solar panel. It's a more efficient use of our cost, so yes, we are proposing to use bifacial solar modules.
And would help you meet the overall quantity without adding additional panels to the facility?
Um,
So if
I
you're only
believe-
limited to surface, the top surface only, you would have to add more panels to reach that 5 megawatt, is that?
I believe so, although I know that bifacial solar panels have a higher energy yield per square inch, and I'm not sure if that's necessarily a higher power yield per square inch. So I'd have to look into whether it's energy or power. But I think it's energy, and therefore I don't think that that saves you on surface area. It just lets us produce more energy.
Is your overall goal?
Yeah.
Thank you. No questions.
Okay, does staff have any questions?
Yeah, it was just a matter of just confirming on the vegetative buffer along Grant Highway. It looks like it goes the entire length on the most recent site plan that I have here, but on your PowerPoint presentation, I think there was a gap in the landscaping. I just want to confirm that this does accurately show the vegetative buffer along the entire east side of the project area, that there will not be a gap in the landscaping.
Yeah, I'm not sure why there are two versions, but yeah, I mean it's not a long linear footage, and I guess it was left out because it's not within that 500-foot radius of a nearby residence, but we can leave it.
Yeah, so our ordinance requires if any part of the facility is within 500 feet of a right-of-way, that it requires the vegetative buffer, so I think it got added in after I mentioned that, so I just want to confirm this is the accurate site plan.
Yes, this will be accurate then.
Okay, that's the only question I had.
Do any members of the public have a question about the testimony? Go ahead and ask a question, and you'll have to give up a mic here so the gentleman can use the mic.
It was just mentioned, what was just mentioned was the vegetative buffer.
Identify yourself again, please,
Oh,
sir.
okay, Ken Merritt, 7516 North Hill, Marengo. It was just mentioned about the vegetative buffer. When you say vegetative, you don't mean vegetables, you mean plantings like shrubs,
Trees.
evergreen trees. How tall will that be?
Yeah. It's the same proposed situation that we had in the last facility here, so really ranging from about 5 or 6 to maybe 14 or 15 feet tall.
Anyone else have a question?
Good afternoon, Andy Nasmith, 19121 Beck Road. I actually own the property next door to this. I have a question. Can you pull up that plot survey, please?
Is that the one you want?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a waterway coming through there, right where they're proposed.
You want to walk up and identify it?
There's a waterway that comes in right through here, all the way down to this tree line here. That's not shown here. That water line, the water from the north side comes all the way from the conservation and from R&R Steakhouse. When they redid R&R Steakhouse, they directed all their water to the back field, and it comes through here. And that's not showing on there. So that's gonna be going right through all your solar panels. And also, this house is not part of the property. This house on the left is by itself, I think it might be on a 2-acre parcel or something. That's not part of the property at all. I'm curious, how much distance is there between this fence line and the property line?
That should be included there. Can you see?
Which side was he on? That was
Between the fence line and the property line. 30, right?
That's 30-foot setback there, so it's just under, it's 105 feet.
Yeah, 105 feet from the fence.
And you're planning on putting grass and trees and whatever there?
There's no vegetative screening proposed south of where the hatched line is. So there's.
So there's nothing alongside of here?
None proposed, no.
And you're thinking about putting crops in between all these fields?
Yes, at least within 50% of the footprint of the array, that's our intent.
Crops, meaning you're talking corn, soybeans, or?
We're not able to support corn because of the height that it grows to. So as my colleague mentioned on the previous project, we would propose to grow hay in between rows.
You're gonna be able to get equipment in between there?
Yes, the project has been designed so that it would allow a typical 12-foot John Deere tractor to traverse each of the rows and turn around and traverse, yeah.
With a baler and so forth on there?
Yeah.
And tractors, because usually got a tractor, a baler, and a wagon.
Yes,
So
I might
it's
not.
quite long.
Yeah, I might not be familiar with all the terminology, but in working with our agricultural consultant, the implement that would drag behind the tractor would be able to go under the 3.5-foot clearance at the lowest point in the day and be able to drag behind the tractor to collect the crops.
You ever thought about putting animals on this property?
Yeah, we do understand that like cow grazing or goat grazing has become a sustainable way of doing like weed abatement. But I don't think it's currently in the plan for this project, but it's something we've considered.
Okay. Now this wetland that you call over here, that's pretty much of a tree line. Up north, you got Coral Woods. You got many deer that travel down Coral Woods. They come down this waterway, and this is where they end up.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to happen is when that fence is there, this is a very busy road here. Both of them are super busy. There's so many accidents on that corner. That means these deer are going to be coming across Coral Road. They're going to hit that fence line. What are they going to do, run at 20? I mean, there's going to be an issue there with the animals.
Yeah, well, I
It's
certainly.
there, because this whole tree line on the south side, that's hunted every year. Every year that's hunted. Just 2-3 weeks ago, I saw probably a dozen deer in there. They feed in there. So that's going to be a big issue with deer putting that up. Because at first I thought you were just going to be putting panels here, but you're going all the way around this property, even the hay field that's over here.
So are you saying that that outcrop of solar arrays shown there is going to prevent deer from easily getting into the wooded area?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
That's going to be a big issue.
Yeah. I'm a vegetarian and I love animals, and I certainly don't like to hear that that would put a large population at risk. So.
Yeah, because you can look at, if there was a full map, you can see what's north of there. And you look at where the conservation is.
Mm.
Because my son owns the farm there, and the deer come right down through the back fields, and they end up over there. Yeah, see where Nico's is? When they rebuilt that, they directed all their water to this back field. And now it comes down here. It's gonna go right through your panels.
Yeah, so going back to that initial comment, we drove past the site this morning and saw it's bright green. You can clearly see that there's water being diverted under the road. So I did speak with Carl and I asked if their wetland team had noted any wetland features there, and they're going to make sure that there was not any.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question, sir. So looking on that map, you can kind of see that waterway that you're speaking of, kind of natural, as it crosses the road and comes down there by the cemetery. Is that what you're speaking of? There's kind of a
No,
line
waterway's
there.
actually coming right here. Yeah, this is it, this is it.
That's what I wondered. So that's the
That's it,
natural
it comes all the
waterway.
way down to here. You can see on the other previous pictures that there's water here. It's like a watershed.
I have a question, this is Jessica Beverly. Is an 8-foot fence enough to keep deer out? If they're coming right for that fence, is 8 feet high enough?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I am.
You can't ask the question.
You know, usually they can jump over a cow fence, but I don't know about an 8-footer. But that's not the issue, jumping over it. It's just that where are they gonna end up when they hit that fence line?
Well, yeah, that was, yeah.
Especially being here on Route 20. Route 20 is, you go on Route 20 between 3 and 6 o'clock. It's super busy.
Yeah, so if I can answer. So Carl was reminding me that it is, I think, more typical to have a 6-foot fence around solar projects. The reason that we had proposed 8 is because our agricultural consultant had noted that it is harder for deer to jump, and therefore you can protect your agricultural yield from deer. But there is nothing precluding us from dropping to 6 feet if, there is a benefit to protecting the wildlife species and letting them in, rather, if they can jump 6 feet. So we can
Well,
look
what are
at
you
it.
gonna do, what are you gonna do when they're inside the fence line?
Right. No, that's just where I was going with it, because we're not able to direct fence heights at all as a body anymore. So I was just wondering, like, if they're pushing in and they go over, that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
I might need to look into the NEC regulations because I feel like 7 feet might be the minimum for screening those sites, but I could be wrong. But we need to check into that and verify if 6
Okay.
would even be allowable.
Okay, you go ahead and look into that.
That's what the new statute is.
So as far as the waterway issue, and I'm jumping in here, and I probably shouldn't be, but is that part of the ag mitigation agreement that you have to maintain that waterway as it is, correct?
Yeah, it's our responsibility as the civil engineers to evaluate water coming on and through the property. We have to account for all of that water. And then there's further requirements set forth by the state and the county for controlling flow rates, so pre and post controlled flow. So what's flowing through today, we can't release at a higher rate tomorrow. But it's bad for us and bad for the design of the sites if we have concentrated flow running against the piles. So it will definitely be accounted for. We'll be looking at this. We've also performed what's called a 2-dimensional H&H analysis, or a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis of the site. So we're accounting for the water that's coming onto the site. We're accounting for velocity, the inundation, and the scour that'll take place as it passes along the piles.
I'm gonna turn it back to you because you're the one asking the question.
Now those pylons that you're putting in, how long do they last?
That I can't answer, but the intent is that they last the life of the project.
Because I put pipe in the ground all the time and that thing's gone in 10 years.
Yeah, these are steel piles, and I think if the corrosion forces acting against them are high, we can galvanize the steel, and it is not intended that the piles are replaced throughout the life of the project. So they're intended to be not living. They're intended to sustain the full life of the project for 35, 45 years. Steel.
I'm sorry for laughing because
Okay.
fence lines don't last that long.
Oh, fence line, I thought.
Well, no, even the pylons, because the pylons is pretty much of a fence post, right, that you use.
They're
to put
steel,
that in.
they're steel,
Right.
or galvanized steel.
Right, right. Okay, now, my other concern was,
Question.
question. Those, let me see, is this a question or not?
Because you can do your concerns
right, yeah.
and have comments later.
Okay, that's about it for now. Thank you.
Can I ask something here?
Yeah, Ms. Gardner, you'd like to ask a question?
Yes, I do. If you did not use the agrivoltaic plan for this particular site, could you configure this all west of that waterway and thereby avoid the problem of the deer and the water and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think we would be able to gain 1 to 2 feet in width between each row and succinctly compress the project and see if we could keep it completely out of that eastern area to mitigate the deer and water problem. But I cannot say that yet about the stream that's been identified as running parallel to Route 20. We have to figure out what that is and see if the project can fit south of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sure.
Any other members of the public have a question regarding?
Well, I need to be sworn in. I did not take the oath before this because I had not planned to ask a question or comment.
Okay, I'll swear you in right now. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. And this is the question phase.
Yes, this is questions.
Ray Beats, Permit Manager, McHenry County Division of Transportation, not the department. You mentioned that you're now moving to have one access request off of Coral Road, which is a county highway under the jurisdiction of McHenry County Division of Transportation. It's a two-part question. Did you request or have you had any conversations with Illinois Department of Transportation about access off of 20?
Not yet. We intend
And
to.
would you be opposed to having your sole access off of Route 20 rather than Coral Road? Considering that you're talking about a perimeter road around the solar facility.
I do not think we're opposed. I think either one, as long as we have access to both of our electrical equipment pads, would be sufficient.
That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, any other follow-up questions by the board? Yes?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't want to be known as the God person, but the consideration on West Coral Road is the utility and customer interconnect, which may require a service pad there, notwithstanding the curb cut. I don't want to wave off into a direction of high hopes. Just call that to the attention on the note, where there is no such interconnect on Grand Highway.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Then we would still require some sort of access road so that our distribution line can run and hit the common distribution system. So, sorry, I forgot your name.
Ray Beats.
Ray Beats.
Ray Beats. Did you catch that, or do you want me?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
You have to say it into a microphone or something. Yeah, please.
I'll take this here. So I'm just showing Ray that there's no overhead electric available for the interconnection along Highway 20. So similar right here, what we have on West Coral Road, we have the distribution line from ComEd. There's nothing along US Highway 20, although we will investigate and see if ComEd may have something available that we're not aware of.
But there is an existing access road off of.
I'm not sure if you're asking me a question, if I'm allowed to talk at this phase or not.
I was just mentioning that since you had asked if we would consider not having any access road from Coral Road, and I had said, sure, as long as we have one access road to both equipment pads, it could come from Route 20. Mr. Cozen correctly pointed out that the point of interconnection is along Coral Road. We would need some sort of access road from Coral Road.
If I'm allowed.
Yes, you're allowed. Yes, sir.
Ray Beats, McHenry County DOT. I don't know that ComEd requires, I know what you're talking about, point of interconnection with all the poles there. The question would be, does ComEd require a driveway to the site next to all the poles that you're installing? Because I believe we've had other solar farms come in through the county. I'm also a member of the Staff Plat Review Committee, and I believe, in fact, I know for a fact, we've got one right now that's up and operating out here on Charles Road. The point of interconnect and all the new poles do not have a driveway right next to them because Charles Road is a county highway, and we made the request that they get access not off of Charles Road but off of Raffle Road, which is a township road.
Yes.
So I can only point to that one to say, I can tell you for a fact that they did not require a driveway immediately next to all of the poles, including the point of interconnection pole for that project. So it has been done.
Yeah, I actually have a project with a similar design where the access road is coming from the southern boundary and it runs all the way north to the poles, but the access does not come from the poles.
So to your point, I think you're asking if they were to only have access off of 20, could they still have their poles off of Coral? I don't think that's an issue. That is a matter of utility poles, not a driveway issue.
There would need to be just some sort of, yeah, it doesn't have to be a road coming from Coral Ray. But we would want a road coming up the poles from the south.
They did not, you can drive out here when you leave and look
Okay.
at it. It's a solar farm at the, just east of the roundabout up here at Raffle and Charles. There, look at the poles, there is no driveway at all coming off of Charles Road.
Okay, so it's the department's request that we don't have any access road off of Coral Ray.
I can't answer that question because the way the county access ordinance is set up, you have to actually make a formal permit application to us to get the technical comments. So, no offense, but you're asking, in my opinion, a technical question that I don't have the ability to answer yet because you have not made a formal written application directly to the McHenry County Division of Transportation, if that makes sense.
That makes sense, and that's a step
that was part of the
probably-
comments that we had in our DOT memo.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. President? Okay. I'm trying to think where we're at. So now we will take Kim's report.
Okay, I'll just go through this quickly. So again, the property is zoned agricultural, surrounded by mostly agricultural zoning as well. We did mention there is a residential zoning and use just to the northwest of the property here and some business zoning to the north across Coral Road. Agricultural land use on the subject property, and there is some residential uses to the north and west as well as across Grant Highway. That blue square there, I believe, is a cemetery. So that would be with that government institutional designation is there. Our future land use does designate this for retail. And it's also got a designation for environmentally sensitive in that same area where we've talked about the wetlands on the south end of the property there. Same comments that I had previously. Again, it's in line with everything that the state has laid out. I did want to point out that I did look up, the NEC code does say that it does need to be a minimum of 7 feet for any fencing that is enclosing electrical equipment. So you could do 7 feet or 8 feet, would be in compliance with our ordinance. Other than that, we have no objections to the request.
Okay, so any questions from the board for Kim? Okay, at this time we take any statements from any members of the public. So anybody who would like to make any further comments about this petition? Yes, please. Again, identify yourself with your name and address and then give your comments.
I'm Ken Merritt, 7516 North Hill Road, Marengo, Illinois. Lived at that address since 1988, which would be 35 years. Wife and I looked in Barrington Hills, Bull Valley, Woodstock, Crystal Lake. We settled on the area because of the beauty. I have a prepared remarks here. I think I can do it in 2 minutes or perhaps a little bit more. I heard about what was done in the state of Illinois, and I think a lot of citizens of Illinois have seen what the Illinois legislature has done recently, and there's some pretty strange things going on there. So let me proceed. On page 165 of the overall proposal, paragraph 4, that was in the package, a sentence states about the solar farm, quote, "It will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of the surrounding area in any way," unquote. I strongly and respectfully disagree. It will highly affect the enjoyment with regard to the jarring of visual sensibilities and awareness. I have extra copies here which I will give to the secretary. The area at Coral and US 20 is a gateway to a large and beautiful McHenry County Conservation District and a gateway to the town of Marengo. As such, inviting and aesthetic views currently give a welcoming and pleasurable sense to travelers and residents using these roads. Traveling northwest on US 20 and approaching Coral a distance away, the sense is a bucolic vista with farmland in the foreground and the McHenry County Conservation trees as a backdrop to the northwest. A solar farm of 12,500 panels visible along US 20 and Coral would be incongruous with the sense of the surroundings. The coldness and severity of high technology versus calming and serene, beautiful nature. Now, I understand, because we saw it there recently, that the long-range outlook for the intersection is retail or commercial, but if and when that might happen, a well-designed architecture such as Frank Lloyd Wright Prairie style with trees, shrubs, and landscaping would be harmonious with the nature of the area and an asset. I looked at topographic maps. The US 20 highway ranges from 10 to 17 feet above the various grounds of the panel farm. Coral Road is much higher, being about 25 feet above some of the ground of the panels. All travelers on these roads would have a very clear views of the many thousands of panels looking down from these roads and seeing the tops of most of the panels. I heard earlier, I believe the engineer said the vegetative buffer will be 5 to 14 foot tall. That still will not buffer the view of travelers on those roads. I believe that there are many other areas in the county that would be more suitable to the cold, hard look of high technology and do not interfere with the glory of nature. However, if the zoning board and the county board were to approve the US 20 and Coral site for solar, I suggest a tall earthen berm around the entire perimeter planted with grass, shrubs, trees, so as to totally hide the view of the entire solar farm from residents who live in the area, as well as travelers and visitors using the roads and coming to the area. I might point out the lady that was left, she apparently agreed that panels are not aesthetically pleasing, and I'll add the word, and are an eyesore, because she said her company tries to keep panels low for visual effect. Her words, I'm quoting her. Thank you.
Linnea?
No. Anyone else in the public have a comment?
Hi, Andy Nasmith, 19121 Beck Road. I know during the presentation they were talking about you're looking for land that's really non-productive, that's a productive land. That one yields good. It's not to where the land has no use other than solar panels. It gets corn, beans, and pumpkins planted on that property. So it is a productive field. Now my question was with those, now, let me see. If something was to happen to your company, let's say in 25 years, there would be somebody that would take this over for 10 years. I would think it would be pretty hard to find somebody that's going to take that over for 10 years and make a profit out of it, especially if it wasn't kept up. Because right now, between 2000 and now, 2/3 of these solar panels companies went out of business. So it's not a good record for solar panel companies.
So I'm definitely not like a bankruptcy expert or anything, but my understanding is that if companies are starting to go under, they would basically put up all their assets at a discount just to get out of the bankruptcy as they can. So there's a lot of banks and asset owners looking to own solar projects because they do generate cash every quarter. So I really don't think that it would be a situation where there would be no buyer. I mean, like, there are huge companies like Goldman Sachs and pension funds that really look to put these projects on their balance sheet because they provide stable cash returns. So I would hope and believe that that wouldn't be the case.
For 5 to 10 years, that's kind of hard to believe a company would be putting up their money to get into a company like this if it's falling down.
Okay, let's just continue with the comment. It's time for comments.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
Any other comments by members of the public? Any closing statement?
Just that we appreciate your time, that's all.
Okay, and we're going to keep this open for something with,
Do you want to continue all of them to the same date for?
I don't think we're going to have time to do the third one, so maybe we can just finish everything else on that day? Okay.
Yes, we will need to at least open the third one so that we can continue to a date specific.
Oh, okay.
After you continue this one, just open and close the
Okay, all right, so we'll continue this one also to April 23rd.
26.
I'm sorry, April 26th, Wednesday, April 26th. So at this point, I will close the hearing, or I will continue the hearing on petition 2023-006, and we will open the hearing on petition number 2023-005. This is part of PIN number 17-13-200-002. The address is Froling Road and Adamson Road, Huntley, Illinois. The property consists of approximately 38 acres and is located on the west side of Froling Road at its intersection with Adamson Road in Coral Township. The applicant is Illinois Solar 9000 LLC, and the request is for a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. So because it's now 4:12 and we got to be out of the building at 4:30, we will continue this hearing as well till April 26th to take the balance of the testimony on this petition. And
Can you see the picture of the property? Can you see a picture of it?
Yeah.
Can you see the picture?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. So we'll put up a picture of the property so you can see.
Thank you.
So this is at Froling Road. So at this point, we will close the hearing for today and continue everything on April 26th at 1:30 PM.
Thank you so much, appreciate it. We were there, Miss Jackie last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole meeting portal.
She probably would have
I don't
waited
print
if
it
she
all.
and now.
Yeah, she only left like 20 minutes ago, right? Dang it. I'm sorry, I gotta take my girls to dinner, otherwise I'd take you over there.
Oh,